Live.
There we go. It's on now. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. We will get started soon. I know that there are a few people that have been joining us live streaming. I talked to Carrie Davison yesterday, and she has been very thankful for the opportunity that she's had to both connect with this meeting and with the Sunday services. So I know there are a few folks that are taking advantage of that. Also, I'm thinking each of us could invite somebody. There are over 100 people that get the email every week for this. But I'm glad you're here. I'm not complaining that nobody's here because you're here. And we've done some great things. I watched the video from last Friday, and it seemed like everyone enjoyed Brad. It seemed like he had a good show, and everyone was thankful for that. So our committee is trying to do things that are interesting and good. Next Friday, as it turns out, we thought it'd be good, something that would be good to hear from folks at HEB as to what they're doing. And as it turns out, that the two speakers that are coming from the HR department at HEB have connections to First Pres. One grew up here and was baptized here, and the other is a covenant partner. So that's a good connection for us. And that's next Friday. On Friday the 21st, let me try to explain a little bit of what our purpose is in that. We want to connect with what's going on here with local missions. And so we're going to switch our schedule a little bit. We're going to have lunch at 11, and I'll remind you of this. We're going to have lunch at 11, and then after lunch, we're going to help Lindsay and a couple of other folks that are involved on getting things together for Saturday. I don't know if Jim and Mary will have things for us to do for.
I guess I just want to make a comment.
Sure. So that's on the 21st. We won't have a regular speaker, but we'll be able to contribute with our hands and legs, be some leg work and hand work for what's going to happen on that Saturday, on the 22nd, for the Love SA, I think it is, or SATX. So be aware of that. And then on the 28th, we'll be going to Morgan's Wonderland Camp. And that will be both a lunch and a tour, and we'll consider that our birthday lunch. And so people who paid for lunch at our last birthday lunch that we didn't get charged for, remember, you have credit for the next birthday lunch. And so did anybody sign up for a room at where we were for lunch at the Chandler House? I know some of you were tempted. So that's what's coming up. And Jim, I'll let you speak before we eat lunch. And today we have a representative from the Children's Bereavement Center. We were supposed to have the executive director and I'm not complaining, because this is exciting. They have been doing a lot of work in Uvalde, and the director is being interviewed by ABC TV today to give a report of that. So that's exciting as well. But I was assured that we have not just a stand-in, but we have someone who's very, very clear. Kristina, we're glad that you're here. Looking forward to hearing from you and what's happening through the Children's Bereavement Center. Bring us up to speed with what that is, what they do, and you're involved in, and they're involved in. So welcome, Kristina, who'll be sharing with us today.
Hi there. My name is Christina Hernandez. I'm the Development Director at Children's Bereavement Center. I saw some cheers a little bit when our name was mentioned. Does anybody here know about the center? Okay, a couple people. So first I want to tell you a little bit about how we came to be, and then I'll talk about the work that we do with children and families. We are in our 25th year this year. It's actually our 25th anniversary. We were founded in 1997 by a counselor in our community who just identified a need. And that need was to support children specifically when they had experienced the death of a loved one. And she started that nonprofit, our nonprofit, out of the trunk of her car with volunteer counselors until it grew beyond the trunk of her car. And then the center moved into a home on West Craig and eventually outgrew that. And in 2010, we moved into our new home, which is on Almost Drive. We're in between San Pedro and McCullough on Almost. We recently completed an expansion, so I think we're kind of hard to miss now. But before that, people would always say, I drive by there every day and I had no idea you were there. When children experience the death of a loved one, they lack the emotional maturity to understand what they're feeling. And for those of us who have lost someone that we love, you know that it feels isolating. It feels like nobody on earth could understand what you're going through. And now imagine you're a child and you're expected to go to school every day, and you may feel like none of your friends know what it's like to lose a mom or a dad. It's extra isolating for those children. And that is the work that we're doing to support kids when they've lost a parent, a sibling, a grandparent, anyone that is close to them. The way that we do that is really through peer support groups. That's the gold standard in grief care. And the reason for that is that it breaks down those barriers of isolation. It brings children together with other children who know exactly what they're going through. We separate our groups out by type of loss. So we have a suicide loss group, we have a homicide loss group, we have sudden death, which is actually our largest group. And those are people who, car accidents and heart attacks, a situation where maybe mom was here to take me to school and mom wasn't there when I got home. We have chronic illness, we have parent loss, and then we have family loss. And our family loss group encompasses broad loss, grandparents, aunts, uncles, even close family friends. And our center, you have to see it to believe it, and I welcome any of you to come take a tour because I could talk about it, but it really tells its own story. It's not a clinical feeling space. It is made to feel like a home. You ring the doorbell, you come in, there's a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, and that's really, really important. But when support group happens 6 days a week at the center, families come into the center together and they share a meal at our dining room table. The meal is provided and served by volunteers, and we eat on china. That's really important because we want it to feel like a family meal that you would have at home. We'll often hear from caregivers that it's the one night of the week that they actually sit around the table together to eat. After the meal, the adults go into our living room and we do an adult session at the same time that the kids go upstairs into our therapy spaces. I think, when I tell the story about the center from caregivers with this vision one night ahead, I think that vision sometimes is of children being very sad. And that is not what happens at the center. Our therapies are art, music, a lot of memory making. Certainly situations that bring children and families to the center are sad, and there can be emotion and tears involved in that, but what you see is kids playing. We heard that from a donor one time during camp. We bring kids to the center for camp during spring break and during Thanksgiving, and it's 3 full days with like 25 6 to 12-year-olds, and it's pure mayhem. It's called Camp Heroes. They wear capes, they run and they play, and we had a donor come in and say, what are those kids doing? They don't look like they're grieving, we're like they're playing. That's how children process grief. Our goal with children is to teach them coping skills. So if we can give them the tools to cope with their grief, then they can use those tools later in life for any kind of situation that life throws at them. And often when children struggle with grief and it hasn't healed properly, they haven't gone through the proper processes, they can turn to alcohol, drugs, there can be behavior issues, and that's what we're trying to prevent. So peer support groups are the biggest chunk of our work, but we also do individual counseling. And we knew pretty early on that we wanted to do that work, even though it's very expensive to do, because not every child is ready for support group. Some of our kids have witnessed unspeakable trauma. They have witnessed the death of a family member, and they want to talk about what they saw, which is important in the grieving process, but it's maybe not appropriate in a group setting. So we offer individual counseling at the center as well. In addition to those programs, we take all of that work we do in the center and we take it on the road to schools. So we're in 6 underserved school districts where we're doing that peer support work and counseling on the school campus during the day. We are incredibly busy. This year we have done, well, as of September, actually August, we had done more than 3,800 hours of counseling, and we had seen nearly 2,000 unduplicated clients. So that means they're coming in, but we're not double counting them. So they're coming in, and they may be coming to see us 6 or 7 times. It's important work, and it's powerful work. And when you meet families who have come through the center, the gratitude stays with them forever. I can tell you that I'm a client of the center. I was a client of my children in 2017. That's why I work there. And it never leaves you. In fact, my children, when I got hired, came in, and maybe I had been there 2 weeks, and they came in to sort of meet the staff under different circumstances. And my son, who was 8 at the time that we were clients, remembered every room. We have a time machine. Time machine room is his favorite, where children can set a day in the future, the past that they want to visit. And we actually have a portal that you can walk in and come out on the other side. And it helps children visualize a future that maybe looks different from what they had planned. But my son immediately said, oh my gosh, the time machine. And that was 2 years after he had last been there. In addition to that work, we respond when there's a crisis. And that can be a crisis on a school campus, the loss of a student or a teacher, where our counselors will go onto the school campus and both help the school staff who might also be grieving. We can help them with their grief, but we can also help them learn how to work with the children. Or we provide direct services to the children and families. In 2017, there was a shooting at a church in Sutherland Springs. I'm sure we all remember that. We went down to that community and we were asked to stay. The community, Wilson County in particular, is very rural and there isn't a lot of mental health resources there. And we stayed. We put up a building, actually we called it Paloma Place, and we were providing general mental health support to that community. So when the shooting happened in Uvalde, we were actually in the middle of a board meeting the day that happened, and we knew that we needed to go, but we weren't sure what we were going to find. Uvalde is a very different situation than Sutherland Springs. First, there were nearly 500 people, children in that school. So the impact is much broader. Many of those children have siblings on other campuses. On top of that, it's a very small town, very tight-knit community, a lot of close relationships between first responders and students, which I'm sure if you've paid any attention to the news, it's a very complicated situation in Uvalde, and those family relationships complicate things more. But everybody was traumatized. In fact, we've spent a significant amount of time with the janitor and the bus driver, who did not have children in the school, but they were deeply connected to the school. So maybe the day after, so that was a Tuesday, on Wednesday, we started sending counselors to Uvalde. And in the immediate aftermath, the families were separated by those who had lost children, and then those who had injured children or were just affected. And we went to both locations and worked with families, but that work wasn't really grief work. You're not ready to process your grief when you're dealing with the traumatic aftermath of an event. You're trying to plan a funeral, you're trying to figure out, are your kids okay? Like, it's very fight or flight in that moment. And the work that we do, what we're really, really good at, is that long-term work that comes later. So we stuck around for a few weeks and knew that we needed to find a way to be there permanently. Trauma is long-lasting. It often comes up, it's a delay, so when you experience something traumatic, you may not seek support for it 6 months to a year later. And so a little bit blindly, because we weren't sure what the future was going to look like for that community, we started looking for a space where we could operate. And we found it actually is an event space. It was completely furnished. We got incredibly lucky that we could move into immediately. And we started seeing families in that space. It's very small. It only has one room to do counseling, so it's not been without its challenges. We're using a pro bono office space that an attorney lent us, and the Episcopal Church, which is a block down, has lent us space to hold groups. And I guess the kind of happy ending for that, for our presence there, is that we do have a permanent facility. The church had a space that they owned, maybe 5 or 6 doors down from where we are, and they have leased it to us for $1 a year indefinitely, and we began renovations on that. We're hoping to open in the beginning of 2023, and it will give us sort of a mini version of what we have in San Antonio. We'll have art rooms and counseling rooms, but most importantly, it's a safe place for the families to go. It's different work in Uvalde because of the emotional political climate in Uvalde. There's a lot of division, a lot of mistrust, a lot of trauma, and a lot of fear. In fact, when we opened our center, it was to be, we called it the Center for Comfort and Consults, and we wanted it to be a drop-in center. We wanted people to walk in and see what we were about and ask questions about how to support their children. And about a week in, we had multiple families indicate to us that they didn't feel safe, that our front door was unlocked. So we had to start locking the door. And even as we look at the construction of our more permanent space there, we've been asked to have bulletproof glass in the front, which I don't know if anybody's been in construction here, but apparently very expensive. And so we're navigating a very different climate, and children and parents with very different feelings than what we've seen in San Antonio. We have offered camps. So we did, I mentioned the camps in San Antonio that we do at the center, but we also do 2 overnight camps out of our San Antonio center. We do one in the summer. We took 80 children to Camp Harmon Sons in Comfort. 3 days of everything that you could imagine happens at a camp. We're stack riding and archery, but our counselors are doing the intense grief work woven throughout. And then in August, we took families to Camp Mystic and Hunt. And that was all families who had lost a parent. So it was the surviving parent and the children, and they did the same types of activities, but the families were doing those activities together as a unit. So we took that model to Uvalde it was August, and we really focused that on injured children. A lot of attention has been paid to the families that lost children, but there were a significant number of children who were injured and it has felt to them like they've been overlooked. There hasn't been as much support or resources for those children. So we held a camp for injured children and their families. It was actually at Morgan's Wonderland. Board Department donated that camp space for us. And it was very popular. We had 12 families sign up, we had 10 families attend, and the ones who didn't come were just afraid. And that's the other challenge is families don't want to go anywhere with their children, they're afraid to leave their house. And we really felt like doing a camp where the family was together, they weren't sending their children away, they were all together, might help tackle that, but there was still some anxiety related to that. And then we did training for the teachers. So Uvalde held summer school this year. It was the last minute decision. And we did a training for 600. They had a lot of staff. So they had, I think the ratio of teachers to students was 2 to 1 for summer school. A lot of teachers and counselors across the state came to lend their help. But we trained those teachers, how do I support a child when they walk on this campus on the first day? And then school started. So Uvalde delayed the start of school by a couple of weeks. And we did trainings at 6 campuses in Uvalde. So that same work, how do I identify a child who needs the help of the center? Sometimes kids are just naturally grieving, they're sad, but they're okay. In fact, often that's a question we get from parents, just some reassurance that their kid is, my kiddo is doing okay. But we wanted to also give them the tools to support children when they indicated that they were struggling. And what we've seen, in particular, the fourth graders at Robb, a lot of them have moved to the Catholic school in Uvalde, and they're having a really hard time. So one of our counselors at the center in Uvalde is going onto the Catholic school campus weekly to support those children at school. So, there's a wide range of services that the center provides. Everything that happens at our center is free to families. We don't charge anything, we don't bill insurance, we don't do a sliding scale. That is really, really, really important to our mission and to the work that we do. We don't want families to worry that they can't afford our services, and often we find that if it's been a caregiver that died, the surviving caregiver couldn't answer an income question if they wanted to. They're treading water and wouldn't be able to provide that info, and we don't want that to be a stress. We've been lucky that we've been able to survive with that model based on the generosity of the community. We have about a $3 million budget, and we're supported mostly by private donations. We have a little bit of government money, but most of that is individuals and foundations and corporations. That's who we are and what we do. I have a couple stories for you, success stories of children and families who have come through. We have Darian, who's 21. He has a little brother and sister who are 8 and 12, and their mom died of cancer. She was very sick for a couple of years, and Darian had to step in as the caretaker for his little brother and sister, but when their mom died, he became their parent. And Darian, we talk about him often at the center because he's such a baby, he's 21, but to think about the wherewithal you have to have at that age to understand what needs to happen to get custody. There's a lot of legal things that have to happen in order to get custody of your siblings, but he became their parent and he brought them to group. They came to group together for a year, and he continues to serve as one of our volunteer greeters. So he has a happy ending, and I think that that's important to think about, talking about the sad stories and the trauma and the tragedy. It's important to understand, so that you understand what we do, but I think it's also important to think about what's on the other side and what is the success of that. in 2020, maybe you guys can agree with me, 2020 and 2021 feel like one long year. I really struggle with trying to remember what happened in that year and what happened in 2021. So I think it was at the end of 2020, we received word from SAPD that they had an 18-year-old whose mom died by suicide. She jumped off of the overpass on 410. And Grace is her name. She was about 2 weeks away from graduating high school. She was at the School of Performing Arts that's located at Lee High School. She had received multiple scholarships. She was a stellar student. She was immediately orphaned. Had she been shy of, 2 weeks shy, or she had just turned 18, had it happened a few weeks earlier, she would have had to go into protective services. I don't know what would have been worse. Now she's 18, and she is now solely navigating all of the things that have to happen when somebody loved dies in terms of services, and then bills, there's car payment, and she was renting, her mom was renting a house, and the landlord wanted to kick her out. I mean, there were so many things that were going on for this child, and we partnered, and we do this often, with both her counselor at the school and Communities in Schools, which is another amazing nonprofit in our community. And together, we pieced together a plan for her. We brought in somebody who helped her with the legal paperwork, somebody who was an expert in that type of work, helped her understand what the resources were, what she needed to take care of. And then we negotiated with the landlord to allow her to stay for another month so that she could get through graduation. And then she moved in with her piano teacher that lived in Bernie. But Grace had received 2 scholarships. She had received one to Loyola in Chicago, and she had received one to UTSA. And she really wanted to go to Loyola because her mom, that was the last trip that she took with her mom. They had gone to visit the campus, and it was very important to her, but it wasn't a full scholarship, and it was incredibly expensive. So again, you're somebody who's 18 years old, doesn't understand budgeting, and is grieving. And so some of that work was helping her. In fact, one of our board members works at SWBC and sat down with her to help her understand budget and balancing a checkbook, all of those things. And at the end, Grace didn't go anywhere. She was too afraid to go to Chicago. It was too rough. And she felt like if she stayed here, everybody would look at her as the girl whose mom died by suicide. And she didn't want to have that identity. She ended up going to university in California. She's near San Diego. She's a sophomore this year. That might help me reverse engineer the date if I did math backwards. And she's doing really, really well. And, that is a success story. It's not ours alone, because there were other people in the community that stepped up to help her. But I think that's another good indication of the work that happens with us. We have another family whose son drowned at a birthday party, and his sister was, I think she was in early middle school, and she's now a sophomore at UT, and she spent a lot of time in group. They came in group, and then she came back to volunteer. So she came back to volunteer with our camps, and she volunteered with support groups, and now she's in a sorority and living her best life in Austin. So the work we do is really important. I like to say that we're the nonprofit that nobody knows about, but everybody should. You don't ever want to think that you're going to need the services of the center, but man, when you do, it is so important to have it. There isn't any other nonprofit in our community doing work like we do. There are a lot of mental health providers who do counseling, but there is no other agency that focuses completely on trauma and grief like we do. And our goal is to continue to serve children even as the need grows. And so, that number I shared at the beginning of almost 2,000 this year alone is double what we did last year. And I think you can look at that two different ways. You can look at it as a really sad statistic, or you can look at it as a really good one. But that means that people know about us, that they're getting referred to us, and that they're coming to get help, because those children are going to come out on the other side different human beings. I can tell you from experience, my children are who they are because of the center. The center saved them. And I think in ways because the center saved them, the center also saved us. And so I'm just incredibly grateful and really grateful to share this story with you. I know I was hearing about some of the different presentations you have had, and I knew I couldn't compete with a kangaroo and a spider monkey. And especially when my topic is, maybe not one that's super uplifting, but I'm really grateful to be able to share it with you. I promise if you tell anyone that you heard this presentation and that you heard about the center, you're going to become that resource in your network. You're going to start getting calls from people who say, hey, my coworker's son or my neighbor, and the answer to the question of how to get help is simply to call our phone number. Calling our phone number is the first step, and we'll take it from there and get the families in the door. Are there any questions? Yes?
This isn't a question, it's a comment, because our local missions had a program called Helping Hands several years ago, and one of the favorite places that I visited to course was our local missions had Helping Hands.
I don't, maybe it's on now.
But anyway, we went to the treatment center when we were in the college.
Oh, okay.
And we also got, so I don't know how we get volunteers for the but we got, but the one thing that I remember most was a teenager was really angry at what had happened, the loss of his loved one, his mother's father's mother, and this teenager had a place to go and do physical things. It was a room where they just let out all the anger. And being a special ed teacher for so many years, I had students like that just had this pent-up emotion ready to explode, and that the bereavement center realized this and had rooms for other children that just wanted to do imaginary playthings. And this kid was really working out. I just congratulate you on your new building. It's near my house. It's wonderful. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you talked about that. We do one of our rooms we call the movement room. And we've got two big punching bags in the middle of the room. And then we have, imagine a large walk-in closet, but the walls are padded and the floor is padded. And there's a bunch of big stuffed pillows. There's actually a purple stuffed body-shaped thing that you can just go to town on. And I think that's really an important part of grief is anger. I think that happens for most everybody. But sometimes you just need to physically express what you're feeling, and everything is okay at the center. We say there are no good and bad feelings, there are just hard and soft feelings. And you can leave those hard feelings with us and take those soft ones with you, but some of that is that energy that needs to be expended. You asked about, we call them potluck partners. So on our website, we have a calendar where you can sign up to serve the meal. It's usually anywhere from 40 to 60 people, depending on which group it is. They're in the evening with the exception of Sunday. Sunday is an afternoon, that's our family loss group. And it really is a very meaningful way to give back to the center. It is the only opportunity really that you can engage with families, so you can actually see the work as it's happening, unless you volunteer as a facilitator, which is also an opportunity, but it's a one-year commitment and there's a lot of training, so it's not as accessible for everybody. So thank you for doing that for us.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Are you a 501c3?
We are a 501c3, yes.
The question was, are you a 501c3? You said you're a $3 million largely privately funded. Are you a 501c3?
We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which means we're tax exempt, and donations made to us are tax deductible.
Sorry, I have one question. Do you have any business cards? The reason I'm asking that question is that in the past, almost 12 years ago, there was a family that could have used your services. They've moved on since that time, but there may be another, and that's why I'm curious about that.
I think, do I have business cards is $1 million question, because I normally have them. But what I think might be better is for me to bring resources. We have a couple resources, brochures, but then more importantly, we have a book called Out Came the Sun, and it was written by our team. It's a little booklet, but it explains to a parent how to talk to a child after a loss. So it goes by age, it goes by type of loss, and it describes behaviors you might be seeing that are completely normal and part of the grieving process, and the things that you might want to look out for, raise a flag and ask for help. But I have found that in that immediate moment, because that's often we'll get a call even from the scene, we've received a call from the scene of an accident, and that it's not appropriate for us to help a child grieve when they're in that traumatic situation. Normally our services begin after a funeral. Funeral is a very important step in beginning the grieving process. But it's kind of that immediate moment that you need help. At least for me, I needed to know how to tell these children when it happened. Like, tell me what to say. And as a parent, I think often you just want somebody to tell you what to do, and you'll get the answer that I can't tell you what to do. Children don't come with a manual. And in that situation, I received everything I needed to say, how to say it, what not to say, and what to look for. And I don't think I could have had that conversation without it. So I think that Out Came the Sun book is really, really helpful. And I can coordinate with Joe maybe and come and drop some off so that you have them for families. And I'll hope that I have my card. Right, that's a good question. We have, as of today, 32 staff members. We were at 28 a week ago, but we just hired 4 associate counselors. Most of those are clinical staff. Most of those are counselors. We have 2 things that are really beneficial. We have a really robust intern program. So when students are pursuing a master's in counseling, they have to intern. And so we are a destination for interns, and they come in every semester, and we work with them, we train them in our model, and then they help us do support groups. Then there's associate counselors, and associate counselors have received a master's degree, and they have an associate counselor license, but they cannot get their full counseling license until they've completed 3,000 hours of counseling. Prior to a year or so ago, you could not go into private practice as an associate counselor, which honestly, I don't know how we have any counselors in the world. If you had to get a master's degree and then you couldn't get a job until you had 3,000 hours of counseling. I don't know how we had counselors. But they changed that. So now associate counselors can go into private practice. So, before a year ago, we might have 10 associate counselors with us at any given time. And in the last semester, we were down 4. And it took us a little while to say, maybe we ought to change the way we do this. We want to keep them. We know that they're good because they've trained under our staff, so it's better for us if we can keep them. So as of Monday, actually, this week, they became full-time staff members at the center. That's just in San Antonio. In Uvalde, we have 4 staff members. It's very hard to hire counselors in Uvalde. Everybody's looking for counselors. And so we got lucky that we have one, her license is LPC supervisor. That just means she's super qualified. And her children moved to Uvalde, so she was looking to move. She's retired from the school district. So we lucked out with her, and we have one person that's part-time contact. But if you know anybody who's a counselor in or near Uvalde, definitely send them our way. Thank you. Thank you.
With all the spotlights been on Uvalde, I know that you age, so with all that spotlight, you get more done when people are concerned watching something. But what about the fear that some of the people may have being in the spotlight and freaking here with the next part? When we talk about the rights.
Yeah.
They not wanting to come to a center that's specifically designed to help. The fear is there that I'm so in the spotlight, some crazy is going to do something. I go to a location.
Right.
Is there anything that the council can do or has to do?
Yeah, I think there's a couple barriers in Uvalde. There is certainly that, just the fear of the media. The media did not help that in the aftermath. The media, I mean, if you paid attention, they were everywhere. They were chasing kids when they opened their door. I mean, we heard from families who were having to run out the back in the alley and catch a car. And there's that. But there's also just the stigma of seeking help for some sort of mental issue. It's that is a barrier, and frankly, we're not quite sure how we're going to overcome that. We are from San Antonio, so we're not local, and that's a hindrance. We've hired somebody who's from the community, and we're hoping that that helps. What we're doing differently there is we're not allowing donors or media to come to the center, and that's very hard. If you ever come see our center in San Antonio, you'll understand it tells our story, and it's really, really kind of critical. And we are choosing not to do that in Uvalde because we want that space to remain safe and welcoming for families. And the sight of a camera can be pretty triggering. So, in fact, with John Quinones, who is, I don't know, have you ever seen What Would You Do? Yeah, so we were very excited about John Quinones. He wanted to be in our center today, and we had to say, we can't do that. And so we actually were going to interview here in San Antonio, and then decided, I guess they have a media hub there, so they're doing the interview actually off-site somewhere. And for our new space, which lots of people want to see, there's nothing to see right now. It is, under construction, but we're sending photos and then images of what we have in San Antonio. I don't know what that's going to look like forever. Eventually, we'll have to let people in to see what we do, but we're really working hard to protect the families and make them understand that we're there for them and that it's a safe space. Good questions.
I guess it's just a comment, but this goes back a really good line. When my son was in the 5th grade, so it was a small country school, the teachers did not have what they have today. But the 5th grade teacher wanted to make a point. I'm telling all parents that if something happened to anyone in the family, and she wanted to know, because it affected the child in the classroom. And so it's gone back.
Yeah.
And my son is 65 now, and this was about 55 years ago. But I still remember that one teacher said it really affected the children. Maybe this sounds too minor, but she wanted to know if they lost a pet, at all. But she wanted to know these things. So it does affect the children, in other parts of their lives.
Thank you. She sounds like a smart teacher. So I worked at the food bank before I worked at the center, and so I used to talk about, and I could talk to you for another hour about food insecurity and children who are hungry. But often when there's a behavior issue in school, they're falling asleep in the classroom, they're acting out, they're withdrawn. Food insecurity is one of the first things you go to, in addition to is there some instability in the home life? But what's transitioned over the last 4 or 5 years is that grief is the strongest predictor of behavior in a classroom, of poor academic outcomes. That was a study done in 2019. And I think that COVID certainly shined a spotlight on grief in a way that it wasn't before. So schools are now requesting, we doubled our school-based program because schools identified a need to have the counselors on site. And I just honestly, anecdotally think we just weren't thinking about that. It wasn't the first thought that a child may have lost somebody close to them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You guys have good questions. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristina, for being here. I know personally what it's like to be called at the last minute to say, would you take an engagement? So you were superb.
Thank
You stepped up to the plate and appreciate it. We have a token of our appreciation for you. This is a history of First Presbyterian Church that was prepared at our 150th anniversary.
Wow.
We just celebrated our 175th anniversary 2 years ago, and no one has stepped up to the plate yet to write that book. So until we have that book,
Thank
we
you.
just want to thank you.
Thank you so
Token of our
much.
appreciation for you being here with us, and I hope you're able to stay for lunch.
Yes, absolutely, thank you.
Jim, you want to share some things about the coming up in October 22nd?
Yeah, October 22nd, everybody. October 22nd, I think everybody knows now we're having Love SATX. And we're supporting Morningside Ministries. And we have a sign-up sheet. This is the official sign-up sheet that appears every Sunday on the table. And we have so far Willie, Pat, Nancy, Harold, Stanley, and Mary that are going to go to Chandler. And that's going to work out pretty well, I think. The other people that have signed up thought they were going to the Meadows. Well, they're not going to the Meadows, it's the Manor. And it's my fault that I didn't catch that at the beginning. I would have put it down correctly. So hopefully they're not just going there because they may have relatives there that they're going to visit, and that's fine. But we need to have them come back to the Manor, so we'll have to work that out. But if anybody that hasn't signed up would like to sign up today, I'll leave the sheet available on the table over there, and you can sign. And wherever you'd like to go, the Manor, we're going to be doing the Fall Festival, and what they're going to do are things like they talked about having a petting zoo, pumpkin patch, pictures. They want to do pictures with the fall backdrop, food, drinks, bingo, which I'm calling on there, and clowns, face painting, and balloon making, popcorn music, things like that. So they've asked for some things from us that we're working on getting for there. And we're also getting some, Joe's, I think, sent you an email saying to bring candy and pumpkins. And so I think that what we'll do is continue with the candy. The pumpkins, I'm going to try to work it out with them to make sure that they get enough pumpkins that they'll be all right. But any other pumpkins that we have another place for them to be used. So I'm going to be checking on some other things that might need to be donated at Chandler. Particularly, I want to make sure we got everything covered there. Mary's away today because of a funeral, so Stanley will be back, I'm sure, next Friday. So we'll reiterate probably everything we said now again next Friday. Okay, but I thank everybody for their support. I think you'll have a lot of fun, and I don't think somebody's going to be overwhelmed with so much work that they're going to feel like they've really been put upon, going here. I think you'll really enjoy it. So that's what I have to say today. If you don't want to sign up now or not, I'll have it out there. We'll have it out there on Sunday on the local missions table there.
Thank you, Jim, for your leadership with this, and Mary as well. And we're just hoping that we can be visible in our support for the things that are happening for Missions Week. Jim is our greatest level of visibility, who serves on the local missions committee and is the champion for Morningside as our representative elder. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I'm a walking, talking billboard because we want to keep you busy every weekend for local missions and in coordination with the mental health ministry here at our church. NAMI has classes, and NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And so we also have had representatives in Uvalde because they need so much work. And we are in the schools ending the silence so that this episode never happens again, because we ask the students, if you see something or you hear something, which happened with that young man who was troubled, then tell someone, or say something to a responsible adult. And so NAMI has classes for parents and loved ones who have an ill relative. We also have classes for people with a diagnosis, and we have homes for, well, say like an older couple has a son who has a diagnosis. We have homes for them, and we need more. And so tomorrow, get up mighty early, go back to the zoo. We had such a good time at the zoo. This time it's completely free. There's free registration and free parking. And my theme is FUN, Friends and Family at First, Unite Now. And you'll see a big yellow happy face sticker if you want to walk with me, but it's on your own. You can meander and see the animals. And this time it's in the morning, and so the animals will be feeding instead of sleeping. We were there last time. It starts at 8:30 in the main lawn, and then you go and meander around the zoo. So I welcome you and hope to see you there.
And it's not likely that it's going to be record temperatures tomorrow at the zoo either, like it was when we were there. So I did get word yesterday or the day before that one of the Women of the Church circles has agreed or has already gotten enough pumpkins for the whole deal. So we're not looking for pumpkins, but we will use them if you can bring them. What we are looking for is candy for the trunk or treat that will take place at the Chandler House. And there's a box just outside my office that is a collection spot for that over the next couple of weeks. So anytime during the week or on a Sunday, you can, if you want to contribute candy for that, that's me.
I asked Mary what kind of candy, the chamber, and she said no chocolate. Get those big packs that have Yum Dums and Sweet Tarts and things, but she said, please, she preferred no chocolate, the chamber, otherwise.
Okay, I didn't understand that to be true. We'll have to go through the inventory. Because on Wednesday I was panicking because I hadn't gotten snacks for our AARP Drive Safe class. And I went looking all over the church, and there happened to be a bag of candy in that box. And I borrowed it with the intention to replace it. And I did replace it, but it was all chocolate M&Ms, and I didn't know that, so I have replaced it with chocolate. So we'll do something else. So if you want some chocolate, go grab that box, and I'll replace it with something else. I don't remember what's exactly in the bags. I do have some Tootsie Roll Pops, and technically that's chocolate. So.
All those who are going to participate, you can fill out the social registry and it explains everything that's necessary. I think there will be, since this is a project, that is off Presbyterian Church, this is necessary. Yeah. Anytime you go into a project.
Will they be available on site?
No, I think what I would do is just give it to you now, and have you fill them out. And then you can bring it back to the desk on Sunday, will do that. I suppose they can, yeah.
I just hadn't seen it available on.
Yeah, we'll make sure that they're available with the signups
And
and,
they didn't clarify that.
and that way we're covered.
Why?
And the sign-up sheets for everything that's happening in the not too distant future are all out there on the table. One thing that we've been asked by the kitchen and our facilities is to give them a little more lead time with who's coming. So even for these lunches, they would really like to know today who's coming for lunch next week. And I said to that, good luck with that. I will try to comply with that as best I can. But if you haven't signed up, all the signups are out there. Sign up today for next week and the week after and all of that. And we know there's fluctuation of schedules and all of that. So I'm not pushing you to sign up for 6 months in advance, but we have been asked by the kitchen to give a little bit more advance notice on things.
You can be sure that you signed up, they've got enough. If you
Okay.
signed up, and that's part of the count.
Yes, yes, yes. We work hard at keeping track of all that. And there's the rest of the month sign up and maybe even into November signups. So make sure that you do sign up for the events in a timely manner. But if something happens that you can't, I'm not gonna turn anybody away for lunch.
Will we hear from Morgan's Wonderland or are they?
No, we'll be out there.
Okay.
We'll be
And I
at,
saw there was a check mark for a shuttle.
yes, there will be a shuttle for Morgan's Wonderland from here, and we will have lunch there and have a tour of their facilities. And so that's, yeah, and I'm looking forward to meeting them in person, because we had them via Zoom. Other questions or things that we need to know about? Well, we're excited to be here together today for lunch. Let me pray, and then you can find your way to a table. Father, thank you for this group. Thank you for all the things that we're able to do together, for the time that we spend together. Pray that you would use the fellowship time around these tables to draw us closer to each other and even closer to you. We ask your blessing on the food for those that prepared it and those that have served it, and just pray that you would guide and direct us every step of the way. In Jesus' name, amen.
I'm not.
So we